Yeah, there we go. Maybe. Who knows? That's what it's all about here on Bad Publicity. You click some buttons, you anger the gods of the internet, or, maybe you appease them. And right now we are appeasing. Is that a word?
Yeah, it works.
Feels like a word, yeah.
It's a trait.
Someone will correct it in the comments below.
Plus two to your appease. Michael, thanks a bunch. We appreciate you coming back on Bad Publicity. It's good to know that our checks are still cashing.
Yeah. The last one I was kind of worried. I didn't know if it'd go through, but it did, so I'm here.
We've got your new list of demands, and as usual, we'll go by American law, so you can plead the fifth on any of these.
Wait, can you not do that in Canada? Can you not plead the fifth? You guys don't have?
No, we don't have an amendment. We just did it. We just did our thing, and we did it right from the beginning. We didn't have to amend anything.
Oh wow!
Didn't have to change it.
Wow.
I mean, like not literally pleading the fifth, but like equivalent thing.
I honestly, I'm not too sure. I've never had to. I don't. Nobody watches that cutting Canadian courtroom drama series. It's like we don't have like a version of Chicago up here where there's like 500 different shows based on what's going on in Chicago, like Chicago Fire, Chicago NYPD, Chicago Law and Order. Right? We're very streamlined.
Chicago's an intense place.
Yeah.
I know. Jeez.
Anyway, so welcome back. So you're fresh off, your COVID tour. I think you've done a couple other podcasts right now. You did a official Ask Me Anything on your, in your homebrew channel, and now you're here. Is there any other stops that you got to go, or?
I mean, there might be more along the way. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of them, but this is the most important one. Let's be honest.
Oh, wow!
Yes,
thanks.
Not playing favorites.
Yeah.
He's
there. Corey, that quota has two positive Bad Publicity shout-outs, and he feels one of them right there. That's
good.
Right there.
I'll mark it down.
So our agenda says light banter to begin with. So we'll break the ice by see how's your quarantine been going? How many games have you designed in this lockdown?
Oh, definitely 30 or 40 by this point. They keep me busy. Quarantine's been fine. It's a little boring sometimes, but it's all right. And overall, got a lot of work to do. Things haven't really slowed down for FFG at all. We're just as busy as before. So, I guess that's a good problem to have. It's definitely better than I think some things that other people have run into. But yeah, it's like I was saying before, I was kind of excited at first when everything first started. I was like, oh yeah, I get to roll out of bed and just work from home, and it's not been as easy as it seemed like it would be. So, but overall, I can't complain too much. It's definitely been okay.
Nice. Corey, you got something?
Yeah. So
we can't be stumped already.
No, we're good. We're good.
This would be a quick show.
So yeah. So what other type of games or things like that have you been playing to like pass the time? Has there been any like a video game that's you've been like really into, like a board game or something like that that's been interesting? Anything that like jumps out?
Research.
That's what I tell my girlfriend to do. Mostly recently I've been playing a lot of video games. So I have like a really crappy old laptop, so it can't play anything new. But when I was in Korea, there were a lot of games that I missed that like came out and I really wanted to play. I was traveling, so I didn't really have anything with me at the time. So I've been playing the Batman game that came out in 2010, Arkham City.
Nice.
I just finished one of the Tomb Raider games. I've been playing, what was the other one? There's like this little hospital simulation game called 2 Point Hospital. That thing's real good. That's a really good game. I ended up buying it on a web and was like, holy, like I've spent like already like almost 20 hours in it. And I thought I'd spend maybe an hour and then like return it on Steam, but I've been into that way more than
Get that license.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot. So
that's great.
Pretty much just those little games, anything that'll just suck away my time, because
Cool. Any analog style gaming you've been doing? Anything like online? Do you do any like role play or any like online board game platforms or anything like that? Have you dabbled in it?
Every now and then, I've got a buddy that lives in China. We met when I was in Korea, and sometimes we'll hop on and play some stuff. Tabletop Simulator, we're on there sometimes. And then there for a while, I had a friend who was talking about getting an online D&D session going. We just it just never kind of happened.
Sounds like a D&D group.
Yeah, that's kind of always my experience. Or you'll meet like twice, and then that's it. It was like, good job, you did 2 sessions. So I would like to do that. It seems like a lot of fun, but I always feel bad for the DM because I don't want to DM. Like, that's a lot of work. But I want somebody else to do it, and it's just I feel like there's just so much commitment that it's really hard to get someone to do that consistently.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to be the guy to like poke the sore spot here, but I gotta ask the hard-hitting questions because this is what we do on the show.
Bring it.
So, how crushed were you when Marvel Champions was not nominated for the Spiel this year? Like, I thought we had a shot.
I actually didn't know it was not.
Crushing him on live. Yeah. Unfortunately, you're no Kinner Spiel Diaris going on here.
We'll get it next year.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do. We'll get it with the whole pack. That's what we'll do. The whole pack, bring it home.
Be the only guy to release like a single blister pack expansion and win the Spiel.
Just blow out the competition.
That's it. It's like the Hanabi 2.0 right here. A small card game takes it all. The other stuff we have coming up. Corey, why don't you talk about the next big news that is probably crushing for the community right now? Might as well just, when the rocks
dive into it.
When the rocks fall, let's see where the bodies lie.
So we'll segue a little bit off the banter section, but I'm sure you saw the news today, of course, about the Gen Con cancellation, officially announced that they're going to be postponing the convention this whole year. They're not going to be doing one until 2021.
So in-flight report right now. Go.
So with like that cancellation being announced, like I'm sure there's a lot of people that are super bummed. I know that's like usually a big thing for like FFG as a whole. They definitely look forward and do a lot of stuff at Gen Con. There's definitely a lot of things I was looking forward to it, but I completely understand the situation and why that call was made. But of course, Marvel Champions, one of the biggest advantages that game has is solo play option. So with the situation going on, and then of course with the cancellation, do you think you might see more emphasis or more things for the solo play aspect of the game, maybe like progress or pop out, due to surrounding circumstances?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, we are, Caleb and myself, the design team, we're somewhat limited in the current situation. We can only do, so many things with rules updates. And it's very much, like, we could obviously offer very big, almost game-changing rules updates, but we have to balance all of those things within the context of the community that we're trying to appeal to. So, I mean, it's something we've talked about, the design team, about how to sort of offer more content and more experiences for players in this time. But I don't know if there's anything grandiose that we can really do. Maybe some interesting things in the future. But cool. So we're relatively limited, unfortunately.
Do you think situations like this, Michael, are going to play into a designer's head now when they're, designing games? Is this something that, I don't want to say it's like, I'm not going to be one of those conspiracy theorist people that are like, oh, this is only the first of many kind of plagues or viruses or pandemics that, we could see. But, I don't think that just a lot of industries and a lot of things weren't prepared for it. Like we saw Asmodee even release like a lot of kind of like, little mini expansions or print and play things. We saw other board game people like jump online and offer solo play variants. We saw, the video game industry and, Steam heavily discounting things just to help people out. Different people were releasing things on Tabletop Simulator. How do you think this pandemic stuff is going to change, like, the board game industry? Do you think it's just going to be business as usual? Like, I mean, we're seeing that whole people are playing more with their families, I think, and interacting more. So is it like, no, this is nothing for us, it's not going to play into my thought pattern? Or is this going to change your kind of mentality to be like, you know what, I'm always going to have a way to play solo or some kind of automated, phantom player in all of my releases going forward? Or I'm just going to do whatever the publisher tells me to include, right?
I mean, that's an interesting question for sure. I hadn't really considered the ramifications of that down the line, but I wouldn't be surprised, even if FFG took that into consideration with anything that we develop that's new. Like, throughout the last few years, I have seen a bit of a pattern with different games that have been offering solo variants. Honestly, before Marvel Champions, I had never played a solo game except for there was one, I forget the name of it. It was like this cute little card game with a bunch of weird symbols, and you're trying to match some things up. It had like this weird like ghost shadow character on the front. I don't remember what it was called.
Was it like Honorum or something like that?
Yes, that's it. That was I downloaded that on my phone. I saw it was free the one day. I was like, I'll give this a try. That was the only solo game I had ever played, and I really enjoyed that. But like, beyond it, I had heard a bunch of other big popular games had solo variants, and it personally didn't interest me much. But I could really see that being a thing going forward, or maybe having more cooperative variants, because I think a lot of families do tend to want kind of those more cooperative games. So I would not be surprised at all if this sort of ripples into designs across the board.
Yeah, I could see it also with some of like your massive like werewolf-esque style games, the popularity of those kind of like greatly being impacted, because those are just much harder to play and get groups together due to the situation. So
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. I think Fantasy Flight was on the right track, but obviously technology and like this is the first few iterations of things. But I don't know if you've ever played like Descent with the app and stuff like that, where it like dungeon masters for you and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I mean, when nobody wants to play that DM, and you can be like, okay, me and a buddy are gonna just play against the app. Mansions of Madness, right? Like they have the app driven stuff, right? I think if there's more along those lines, I think Fantasy Flight is already diving into that app based stuff, and whenever Twilight Imperium 6 comes out, like they'll probably have that to a T. But I just think that whole app based thing is very interesting from that solo play perspective, right? So it's just interesting to see if you guys will like what will happen in the community from that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we definitely took lessons that we've learned here to heart and implemented them later.
Sweet. So to kind of add on to that, so one of the things that I always look forward to at Gen Con is mega scenario stuff. Like when they do like the big Arkham scenarios, the nightmare mode, like Lord of the Rings. And I was really looking forward to see if there was going to be something announced for Champions, or if there might be like some big event. And of course, now with the delays, it's just like, great. Now you have to wait, find out. I know it's not anything you could really speak on, if that's even something that might be in the works or potentially coming, but it was just something like we're looking forward to, and hopefully maybe something like that pops up down the road.
Sure, I know a lot of people are excited for stuff like that. I've heard other players say similar stuff, so it's always extremely impressive to watch when Matt Newman specifically does that type of thing with Arkham. It's always just the level of detail and work and effort behind all of that is very impressive, and I know that players really appreciate that thing. So I think there are lessons we can learn from that, and I think players in the Champions community would also enjoy that type of thing.
Yeah, he's done some epic work for those scenarios that are special Gen Con based ones. I mean, some are just so mind blowing. They pretty much only be done in those scenarios, right? Like that Arkham, is it the Labyrinth ones that like you have to play with like so many people and get pods together and you're passing cards, and I'm like, I don't even know that many people or want that many people in my house to play.
It seems like a lot of work.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to that DMing, right? Like, if someone invites me, I'll play, right? But I ain't mingling with that.
Sweet.
So do you think, on the last part of that, do you think this game hit, Michael, at kind of that right time? Like, the world needed this kind of cooperative game right now? Like, it's where you can just pump it out and play with, the people in your household, and you're not creating enemies. Like, it's not me versus you, and then we both go to, to bed angry. We're like, right? So, how has your mind and your mindset differed now and warmed up to this whole cooperative game thing, and feel like there is, is it the future, or?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I know that. So when I first started working on Marvel Champions, when I first was told that it would be a cooperative game, it wasn't that it was a hard sell for me, but it was definitely different from what I had done in the past, as a designer, but also played in the past as a player. And so, there was a bit of a learning curve. There was also a bit of like an appreciation curve, for lack of a better term. Like, I think when the first time I ever played Arkham, I was like, oh, this game's really cool. But there was this certain level of like, can this game really be deep? Can it really like hold your attention? Can it go on and on and on, and have the same level of experience and depth and trial and struggle and all that stuff that a competitive game does. And obviously at this point, I think we can say it probably does.
Can it break your heart the way that, stealing that last agenda point can, right?
So it took me a little bit to get to the point of being like, yeah, games that are cooperative can definitely do that. And I think over time, I not only have I come to appreciate cooperative games, I actually, in a lot of ways, I enjoy working on cooperative games. That's a hard word to say, cooperative game. I enjoy working on those games better than competitive games, because of that community that is there, because people want to share the experience, and there isn't this meta where everyone's working against each other, and this kind of environment that just pits people one-on-one. I don't know, it is kind of it's really nice to see all that reinforcement. So I think going forward, like, I could definitely see cooperative games having much more of a foothold as the years go on, because I think they really do. They work for families, and I think more relaxed groups a lot better than the games. And I think they just breed almost nicer, happier communities in a way.
Yeah, I mean, even just looking at like the longevity aspect. If you look at even like the catalog FFG has, like, look at how long Lord of the Rings went for.
Sure.
And then, Arkham's still trucking along, doing great. And then you kind of compare it to some of the competitive style games, and just like the vast library and the experiences and stuff those give. So,
yeah. But I think it's too, because if those, and this will play in, I'll go, I'll rearrange the questioning here for a bit, but I'll lead into it. But it's, does that go with the fact that when you have a game like Lord of the Rings or Arkham, how much concern, Michael, even relating to this game, is balance important, and where do you need to balance things? Because we have such a wide variety of player base that's coming into this game. So is it important to say, like, balance a hero? Like, if a hero, and what does that even mean? Like, balance it, right? Like, if it's broken, you're only winning the game. Like, is he too powerful? But maybe that's what, a casual player wants. Like, I just want to pick up my hero, and it's only fun for me if I win. And then someone else might pick up that same hero and be like, this guy wins every time. He's broken. It's not giving me that challenge. So how do you balance a cooperative game? What do you guys talk about around the table? Like, because to me, I think, like, each hero, it doesn't matter if there's, like, a broken one, quote unquote, whatever that means to you. But I mean, it all depends on the experience that you're creating for the person that really wanted to play that hero.
Sure. Yeah, I think generally when we talk about balance, first of all, I guess I'll say that I do think that balance is important, but I think it's important within the context of the puzzle. So as long as the player, can sit at the table and have meaningful decisions. They can look at A, they can look at B, and they can say that these are relatively equal. There's not a clear-cut option. then, I feel like the elements there that are in play, that are in your hand, whatever it is, those are balanced. They're kind of aiding to that. If you have option A and option B, and 99% of the time you're going to choose option A, then I think we've kind of made a mistake and we've messed something up. Now, in the context of heroes related to each other, I feel like that option A, option B thing is really only each hero almost individually. We want the heroes to be somewhat on level with each other. I don't want my hero just to blow your hero out of the water. If we're playing, 2 players and I do all the work and you do nothing, I'm going to feel great, but you might feel really bad, right? Like, it's not fun to watch your friend basically win the game. But at the same time, like, we did both win. It was this group effort. So I think that, sometimes Caleb and myself do tend to sort of push things maybe a little bit harder. Actually, to be honest, I think Caleb is better at reining things in because he worked on Lord of the Rings for so long. So he can kind of look at a card and say, ooh, that might be a little too strong. Whereas I'll look at a card and be like, oh man, I don't know if I want to put that in my deck. I'm thinking very competitively, whereas he's thinking very cooperatively. And most of the time we can usually meet in the middle and find good ground. But even when we don't, accidentally we overlook a card, or we test it but we don't necessarily see its potential, I think there's not a meta you can break. If you get a card in a pack and you play with that card and you're like, holy crap, this card's way too strong, I mean, there's a lot of different options to make that card feel weaker. Nobody likes to hear it, but you could just not play with that card. It's not like you are giving up ground to another player by not including in your deck. But B, we've got different difficulty levels, and really at the end of the day, we see those difficulty levels as a very clear-cut way to help balance out some of those stronger heroes. Not just even individual heroes, but also some hero combinations. Like, some heroes are just going to jive really well with each other. I might sit down to play a game with one set of heroes, and all I can do is fight against Ultron in expert mode, but then I can sit down with the next group of heroes and just blow through him. So suddenly I have to play heroic 1 or heroic 2 or whatever it is. But having those levels of difficulty in place really help us say that, even if these heroes are a little bit stronger, you still have those decisions you can make. You still have that puzzle you can kind of play with. And at the end of the day, I think that's the most important thing.
So then you're not really, because you're not worried about creating that mismatch like a competitive card game, right? Or you're not worried about, something in the very first expansion pack that we released is going to come back and haunt us, 4 years later, right?
Sometimes we'll have those conversations. Honestly, sometimes we will create cards and then it'll come up in testing, or Caleb or myself will see it and say, oh man, and in the context of this other card that we have in the pool, maybe this interaction isn't healthy. But it's only really not healthy if it is basically preventing the encounter deck from doing what it's doing. If you sit down and play the game and then you're literally just not playing a game, like I know that, for instance, Stunlock Captain America is a very popular build. I think that came out during the playtesting for single player, but both Caleb and I generally, when we're thinking about the player base, this is a cooperative game. We want it to be available in single player. We want to make sure that everyone can enjoy it, but really at the end of the day, we're primarily trying to focus on 2-player and 3-player. So Stunlock Captain America in single player, super powerful, but maybe in 2 and 3-player he's strong, but it's not going to absolutely define the experience. So sometimes we have to kind of make sacrifices here and there, and sometimes we have to not necessarily, we don't want to tweak down every card to the point where you just don't feel like a powerful hero anymore. But we do want to make sure that, when you are playing a majority of games, you can still have these interesting, compelling things that you can do.
Yeah.
Do you find the heroes harder to balance than the villains? Or is it the villains that set that difficulty bar and you just have to gauge it from there?
I think, personally, I definitely think the heroes are a lot harder to balance, mostly because, you have that player decision behind every action, and they can figure out there are interactions that, I'll design a kit for a hero, put it up on the playtest forums, and within 2 days, the playtesters will find interactions that I didn't even know exist. But at the same time, sometimes we'll release a pack, and within 2 weeks, the community has found interactions that none of us knew existed. So I feel like, putting that, all of those elements together, It's really hard sometimes to create the puzzle for a player where there's not just that obvious option. Whereas, when you're creating a villain, a scenario, you want to get that hook right. You want to get that mechanic interesting and fun and make that scenario feel different from the other ones. But if that scenario is too easy or too difficult, it's just a numbers game at that point. You lower the villain attack, raise their scheme value, whatever you got to do. Honestly, a lot of times you can get a scenario, and it doesn't happen all the time, but many times we'll get a scenario into the first iteration and we'll like the core hook of it. We'll say, well, let's just keep that and then just play with the numbers. And then, it's pretty much just, easy from then on out. But with a lot of heroes, like sometimes we have to tweak really big things throughout testing all the way up to the end just to try to get it right to where we want it to be. So heroes can be very, very tricky to balance for sure.
Yeah, and to paraphrase this next part, I remember talking with Damon Stone about that kind of topic that you were saying, and he kind of said it along the lines of, it's really hard these day and age because what you're doing is you're putting your product out with the lines of communication and these forums and the internet now that kind of take something. There's people out there that will always, go above and beyond and find the most max min, level of a deck, and they will play every scenario. They will adjust micro transactions and they will come out, and the community as a whole will then eventually be able to come to the most optimal decision or build a lot quicker than they would back in the day, right? Like, the way information used to travel. Like, nobody knows how, if you have problems with a Nintendo game and you blow in it, right? Everyone just knew that, right? But you didn't read that on the internet, like, right? So things travel at different paces now, and everything's just so much more accelerated with the with these communities, right? Like, you look at the Discord servers and the forums, and people are looking to crack a code, and they will get there. So the only way to do that is if FFG had everybody in the world on the playtest, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah, for playtesting, we have, a couple dozen playtesters, and they're very dedicated and they do a really good job. But a couple dozen playtesters do not stand up at all to thousands of players, sometimes tens of thousands of players that are very vocal about, all the interactions they find. It's just, the math just is never there. So, unfortunately, it's just a reality. Any card game I personally ever seen, and it's not to make an excuse. I think if we miss the mark with a card, there's always, maybe something we could have done better. But I feel like there are always going to be those interactions that we just unfortunately did not see, and then they get out there, and it's like, oh man, we should have caught that. Unfortunately, we did it. Sometimes we have to kind of correct course later on. But
yeah, and you can do that in various ways, right? Like add cards, do things. Fantasy Flight has done, has done those, quote unquote corrections and handled those in various different, different methods. It's not like the the digital age where you just get like a new update, right? You guys are, you're not
just patches in.
Yeah, It's not like you're this new Santa that comes in and changes my thwart value on all my hero cards reduced by 1 with a Sharpie in the middle of the night and then sneaks out, right?
Sometimes I am really jealous because like board games are such an interesting balance of that. We have to stand up to the internet age, but we don't have the same tools that video games and stuff do. In a video game, like I've played a lot of different card games, and if a card's too strong, then the next week it's just nerfed. It's different, and then everybody just plays with it like that. But with printed copies, they just it's a lot harder. So it's a fun challenge for sure. Right?
Stand by your conviction from the get-go.
Yeah, basically. Once you print it, it's there.
We're gonna shift now, and let's talk about probably my opinion, and this will probably take away now from another video. We won't be able to do this, but I think the single greatest pack released today is the Green Goblin pack. This was phenomenal. You want to talk about what went into building this Green Goblin? I know this is a throwback for you. Probably everybody wants to talk about, what's coming. But I don't think people are giving the Goblin pack enough credit. Anybody asks me, they're like, I picked up the core set. What pack should I get next? Goblin, definitely Goblin. If you can find it, get it, lock it down. Probably buy 2 of them just in case you lose anything from it, right? Like, I just honestly, I think it was that fun. Like so can you talk about like how it came to be? And hopefully you don't answer all of the follow-up questions in this.
I'm just going to talk for the next 20 minutes, so be prepared. Before I start talking, do you want me to turn on my other light? I feel like I'm a little dark.
No, it's a mystery, right? This is
You're good? Okay, I'll just keep, I do feel pretty cool right now.
So it's up to you. That's totally your house, your lighting, right? So.
We'll leave it right now. It feels very relaxed. I feel real chill.
Okay.
Good. You want that atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly. We so during the development of the core set, I think that we were probably about halfway through development. We had kind of established, we'd run through the vision, done all the pitch, written all the art briefs, done all that stuff. We knew all the heroes we were doing. We knew all the villains we were doing. And about halfway through, we had this discussion about how in some of our other cooperative games, we've run into an issue in the past where we will release the core product and then won't have anything following it for, the next couple months or so because of, product release timelines. And how sometimes in a cooperative game, people really content. So we decided that during the core set, we were going to start developing additional content, which doesn't generally happen, but that's just how we did it. We made it a real tight schedule, but it was fun. So yeah, the Green Goblin was developed mostly in conjunction with the core set, and I forget how we landed on the Green Goblin, but he felt like the villain to do. He just he's a pretty cool bad guy, and at that time Nate French. So Nate French is the head designer of the studio now, but before that he was kind of the head of the LCG department. He was kind of doing a lot of different things. He had his hand in a lot of different honeypots. And Caleb Grace was sort of, with Nate French, he was kind of leading the charge on a lot of the core set stuff. I was the newest from among them. Caleb's been there like at FFG, I think 7 or 8 years. Nate's been there for like 11 or 12 years. So, a year and a half, 2 years of tenure was not that much compared to them. So I was very much in a supportive role for the core set for a lot of things. But when we decided to do the Green Goblin, Nate French was like, "Oh, I know that you really like Spider-Man. Would you like to work on the Green Goblin?" I was just like, "Hell yeah!" So I start developing it, and I actually think originally it started as one scenario, and we tested it for a little bit, and we realized that we could split it into 2, and then we realized that we could cram some modular sets in there, and it just over time it just sort of developed into what it was. We very much so early on, we had a great tester base. But we very much were trying to pull in testers that we thought were going to be our initial target audience, the players that are like, oh, Marvel's great, but I don't know a lot about LCGs. This is something I want to pick up. So in the Green Goblin pack, we wanted to make sure that we had kind of split difficulties on the scenarios. We wanted to have one scenario that was relatively easy to jump into, and one scenario that like really gave players a challenge. I think that was achieved. Personally, in retrospect, I wish that the first scenario maybe had a little more bite, and maybe the second scenario had a little bit less bite, because I've quite a few newer players try that one and they just get demolished. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how it came through. I always really loved, I think my favorite part of the entire pack is the modular sets. I really like how creative I was able to be with all of those. They were a lot of fun to design. So, just a lot of play testing, and eventually we ended up sending it out into the world.
I just got it. I don't normally do it, and I won't because I have headphones on, but hats off you for the work, honestly. I'm not even saying that just from a buddy to buddy, friend of the show, because we want you to come back.
It's in the agreement. It's in the agreement. It's okay.
I'm telling you, I love to just open these packs up, like, right, and see what comes. So it was me and a friend. He like called me up. He's like, I picked the Goblin up on the way home from work. Are you come over tonight? I'm like, okay. When the kids go down, I'll be there. And and I'm like eating my dinner with the kids, and they're telling me about something, some drawing, and I'm like putting the hero deck together really quick. I'm like, oh, the Goblin, I gotta put some things in there. But we get there and we open the pack. And he didn't read it, and we just read okay, this is how it works, this is the setup, and we stop, right? So nobody looks through it. We didn't know it was coming, but it was so awesome. The Norman Osborn, the first scenario is like bouncing back and forth between the Green Goblin. We were like, oh my God, there's another scenario in here, and then all the modules that were included. Going back, like more iconic. I was like, how long do you want this game to last? Like, you're giving me the Scorpion, like Electro, Tombstone, like main villains as like little modular sets that you can put. I'm like, milk this, Michael, milk this, But it was just phenomenal. Like, I mean, I think at one point. At the end, I was like, holy crap, I have to work tomorrow. It's 3 a.m. Like, we can't play another game. No, right? But it was just such like a refreshing surprise from, not to say that the core set was, dull compared to this, but it was like, I was like, you guys went from like, one level to just kicking it up a notch, and I never expected something so crazy and thinking outside of the normal of a core set with the first kind of scenario bonus pack, right? So I just think you guys took really crazy risks there, and I didn't know if that, like you said, the levels and things like that would scare a lot of people off and be like, let's go back to the safety of our core set. But just what was
it's what a beat up on Rhino over and over again.
But I think it was so awesome to get that surprise about. I'm like, oh my God, the hero is flipping, and I'm flipping my card from alter ego to this stuff, and the way that you played that up was just crazy. So I hope we see more of that in the future. These mini packs that have like multiple scenarios like that in it. I think that was kudos, great choice.
I really appreciate that, man. That's the whole Green Goblin pack. It was like I said, it was kind of on top of the core set, and it was there were some times where I was very busy with a lot of things at once. But honestly, the idea of the flipping villain that came about from Nate French. Like, he was like, oh, do you want to do Green Goblin? I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, he has to flip. And I was like, okay, so how do I make that work? And I think honestly, I love that mechanic a lot, and I would love to revisit it someday. I think it's a really cool idea. But I think in retrospect, I'd probably do some things a little bit differently with that scenario, just because like that was the very first scenario you're going to play after the core set, and we got some feedback and testing that like, it wasn't that people didn't understand how to do it. It was just that it's definitely a more involved mechanic than I think a lot of the other things that you see. So I kept kind of like toning it down because I really didn't want it to be too heavy. I really didn't want it to be too difficult. And I think I learned a lot of lessons from that pack. I'm really happy you enjoy it, but I love it too. But I think I really love it for a different reason. Like it made me appreciate so many things just about cooperative design and also just like kind of streamlining design.
So here's what we do then, and I know that your boss will love this idea. So what we propose is, like the Lord of the Rings, the director's cut. So you're gonna you tell him that we need to release the Green Goblin scenario, the Michael Boggs designer cut, and you just release it the way that you wanted it to be, unabridged. Just go to town on it, and I mean, you're just selling more product in the end, so they'll how would they not be behind it?
If you want an idea of how that'll end up, I like to play in design. So.
But is that,
that's his favorite character, so it's easy. Yeah. You're probably throwing that to the wrong guy.
Is that how hard is it to do something like that? I mean, I know you talked in the past about a conversation with Andrew Navarro when you're designing a game, and then he comes in out of nowhere, sipping a coffee, and he's like, "Oh, I really like what's going on here. Now make it 4 players, right?" But then you got, you're like all excited to do Goblin, and then if Nate French walks by and he's like, "Yeah, just make sure that the villain flips," and you're just like, "Oh, okay." Like, how hard is it to take those design constraints, or do you relish in that? Are you like, yeah, I'm up for that challenge. I'm the guy.
Well, it's a bit of both, to be honest. They're fun. Sometimes those challenges do come, and they really make me look at something in a totally different way than I would have. I think Goblin was a perfect example. I would honestly not have thought, or at least not originally, to make Norman Osborn flipping a Green Goblin. It seems so obvious looking at it, but just that's not what I was thinking when I was thinking. I was like, Goblin Glider, yes. Pumpkin bombs, that's what I want. But Norman Osborn, like, that seems cool. How's that going to work? So for Nate French to say, like, this is what we want to see, definitely made me push myself. And I think the pack is better for that. But it does make things hard. We've got a pretty extensive visioning process. Whenever we're coming up with a new product, we have to send it to a big group of people, and they all have to kind of sign off on it. And sometimes you have to go through multiple revisions of stuff to get something approved. So generally speaking, by the time you get to the point where you're actually designing stuff, there's not really any surprises. Like the people who would have the power to come in and say, "Hey, change that," have already said it by that point. So there's not there's only maybe 1 or 2 times, and it is with Andrew Navarro that I can think that somebody came and was like, "It's got to be different." But every single one of those times, like, I think it did make the product better in the long run. Like those people have been hired to that position generally for a reason. So yeah, it's tricky for sure. It's really tricky to do someone else's vision and to make it your own vision, but it also, there's a lot to learn from it.
Sweet.
Corey, you want to talk about something from the Green Goblin here?
I mean, I think he's pretty much covered all of it. I mean, my biggest thing that I appreciated was that there was actually 2 scenarios in the pack. So that was something that actually caught me off guard, because I didn't catch that if I was mentioned in any of the blurbs. And that was like, why is there another Goblin in here? And I was like, oh my god, there's a second scenario.
Where did you come from?
Yeah, I know. This is value. So, and I love the second one, the mutagen and all that stuff. I think it's a really fun scenario to play, and it's one of my favorites. So
that's awesome.
It's cool.
And something we haven't seen too much of yet, but I think both you and I have talked about it, is around the State of Madness, creating those environment cards.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think that is, I mean, we did kind of like our wish list of things we'd like to see inside of Marvel, and I mean, it was big on, upping the level of difficulty or complexity with different environments, and not just like a environment as in like a State of Madness. We were just like, can we fight in like City Hall or an actual bank, or and it's just like, instead of flipping out module sets or scenarios, having different environments to kind of slide in and out there.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think players should definitely expect to see more environment card usage down the line. One of the reasons that there haven't been so many up to this point is because, generally speaking, environment cards they most of the time they're just going to create sort of a separate effect or trigger that you just have to keep track of. And that's fine. Some scenarios really need that to be interesting. Sometimes it really creates these compelling moments and decisions. But for the core set and the products following it, we wanted to keep the triggers as few as possible. But, going forward, I think as we get further into expansions and scenario packs and all of that stuff, we can expect a little bit that the player base will be more familiar with that type of stuff, especially if you stay in for the long haul. Like, I think there's generally a certain level of player that really wants that type of thing. So going forward, the environments will crop up a bit more.
Nice. All right, so Goblin, perfect. Nothing else to say. Nothing to critique. Well done. Well
Perfect.
done. Take a bow, sir. Corey, the new hot topic right now, sweeping the community, is the other green pack figure that's coming out. So
the Hulk. He's talking about the Hulk. So, yeah.
I'm not
Maybe
familiar.
you've heard of him.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn this light for 1 second. I can't see myself. I'll be right back.
Okay. Got him.
God, he's getting in trouble
I
with
don't
a
think
lawyer.
that did anything at all. That didn't change it. Okay,
You know, there's this little shine that comes.
there we
down,
go.
so
That's
it's
what I
good.
wanted.
It's good.
I just wanted. Yeah, this is my good side, and I just wanted to really reinforce that.
So yeah, I'm just gonna go through some random questions about the Hulk pack, since this is what a lot of people are pretty excited about. You know, of course, there's been spoilers that has been spread about through the community. A lot of people are like causing a lot of really cool discussion, and people like talking about them. And we were fortunate enough to be given the Crushing Blow card, which was pretty freaking awesome, and looks like it's going to be like a staple and a mainstay. I mean, obviously it's a mainstay; it's built into his deck, but it's going to be like a staple card you're gonna search for. So I guess I just want to know, I guess, like any like design thoughts or things that came up like with that card, and then just a interesting follow-up question: if you played with a lot in testing, what's the largest crushing blow you've ever landed while playing around with the card?
So for a long time, this card, it was real simple. So I guess starting off, Hulk's thing from pretty much the beginning of this current design, we actually went through like 4 or 5 different iterations of Hulk's entire kit. He was a real hard character to get right. Yeah, he was a tricky one. Mostly because like, so I see a lot of ideas online, different things that, you know, people want to see from the Hulk. One of the common mechanics is like something that forces you to flip from Bruce Banner to Hulk. I think people wanted to see that like printed on Bruce Banner, and we tried that originally. That was like version 1 of his design, but we found really quickly that it just became frustrating. It sounds cool, you know, in theory, and then you actually do it like 3 or 4 times in a game. You're just like, this kind of sucks. I don't want to be Hulk right now. I want to be Bruce Banner. And it just got frustrating. And that's not what Marvel Champions is supposed to be. It's supposed to be empowering. You're supposed to feel larger in life. So each iteration, we just kept, you know, streamlining Hulk more and more to sort of capture that feeling of like being big and powerful, but also because he's the Hulk. He should just smash things. Like that's his one move, basically.
Right.
So once we got to this iteration, we decided almost kind of in the same way that we did with Captain Marvel, we wanted to have Hulk focus on physical resources. It just kind of felt thematic. And it also kind of helped us, you know, do some really powerful effects while kind of tailoring his, or bringing down his design a little bit, or his power level rather. So with this card, you know, from the beginning, it had the, you can only spend physical resources to pay for it. And for a long time, it was real simple. It was just hero action, deal 3 damage to an enemy. Just efficient, 1 for 3, done. And it was like that in testing for quite a while, up until I think it was just the last little bit, the last like testing stretch. Hulk was testing well, but it was just like he just didn't feel like he always had the punch that you wanted him to. Mm-hmm. So I ended up trying out this design. I'm like, that sounds fun. You can boost it up higher and higher, and immediately like it was. People seem to really like it. So the highest I've seen personally is only 5, but I would not be surprised if you can get this really, really high.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about like different combinations that we already saw in the card pool of ways you could stack it, and I think we came to maybe like 5 or 6. And I think maybe like a viewer saw there was like another combination you could do, but it's cool. It opens up a lot of things to think about when you're deck building and stuff with it too, of how you can sync everything up to try to improve the effectiveness of that card.
Yeah, I know with like leadership, you could probably pump it up a bit more.
Yeah.
I definitely would not be surprised if one day we get to like where you can get to like 7 or 8. But I think that's cool, right? You're the Hulk. You should be able to do that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, we also noticed looking through the pack, Hulk doesn't have an ally, and I think he's the first without an ally in his 15.
Yeah.
So was that like early in the design process? You guys just assume like, he doesn't need an ally, he's the Hulk? Or was there something that came along maybe in the balance you just wanted to take an innate ally out of the deck?
Yeah, it was kind of honestly both of those things. So early on, we talked about different allies that we could give him. I think She-Hulk was talked about. Hulk has a friend named, I believe it's Rick Jones, that kind of came about. We talked about a couple different characters, but it was really, at the end of the day, nothing felt like it needed to be in there. And sometimes that does sort of instruct our design. Like if we're just putting it in there to put it in there, then it's probably not worth having in there. So we just kind of decided to test Hulk without an ally and see how it felt. And it was received really well. Everyone seemed to enjoy it. It definitely kind of bends the design a little bit. And allies are pretty powerful, so not having it in there very much does kind of help him be stronger in other ways without having that blocker and all that type of stuff.
Nice. Yeah, and another thing that we talked about too was, of course, the idea behind the hand discard mechanic.
Sure.
Was it kind of always like that, or like how did you like build up to that being, I guess, the way to kind of tone him down, or maybe like what theme is that trying to capture with him, like burning his hand every single time when he's at the end of his turn?
Yeah, so actually for a long time, Hulk had a mechanic that was like a second or third iteration. He would like build rage, like as he'd get hit, he would get angrier and stuff, and you would like get these like counters that you were building up, and it would affect your card strength. And I loved the design. I that's in Netrunner, you got all these little counters and tokens you're moving around. I always like that type of power counters.
That's right.
But I was honestly playtesting him one day, and I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but I know that like I distinctly remember looking at my hand and then looking at Hulk and like counting a thing and then looking at like the cost and the damage. It's like, okay, I could do this and I could do that. And then I just had this moment like, this doesn't feel like Hulk. Like I shouldn't be counting stuff with Hulk. I should just smash stuff. Like that's what Hulk does. It just didn't feel like him. It was way too mathy. Yeah. So we talked about some ways to kind of change that around, Caleb and myself, and I believe Jeremy Zorn was part of that conversation. And at the time, he actually had a card. I believe it was Boundless Rage, actually. Boundless Rage, effectively, its force response used to do what Hulk does. So it gave you this like plus attack power, but at the end of each round, you got to either like discard it or discard cards from your hand, or something to that effect. And Caleb was like, yeah, whichever way you go is fine with me. He's like, just kind of keep me in the loop. So I was kind of looking through his cards, and I saw the effect. I'm like, that does feel like you're really angry, and it really does. Like, you can't plan for your next turn. You can hit really hard right now, but what's going to happen the next time? So I think it's one of those drawbacks that, like, if you're a skilled player, if you build your deck right, you can generally get around it. But that's intentional. Yeah. Like, if you know how to play with it, then you can play with it. But I think a lot of players who are a little more casual, like they're going to draw their hand, do their one big attack, still feel successful, but they'll be like, oh man, I'm enraged, I'm so angry. They'll discard their hand, but then maybe the next time they'll play, they'll say, well, how can I do this a little bit better? How can I do this a little bit better? So it's kind of trying to do a couple different.
So as a side note here, just to kind of talk to the people that are on, that are joining us.
The people?
Yeah. Bad Publicity does everything live, off the cuff. We don't edit. I mean, the Michael Boggs' light there is probably the only lighting we've ever had budget for. So sometimes when things are working, we don't like to play with it. But I took it. I was like, this chat is a little too quiet for a Boggs episode. And I rolled the dice and I hit refresh, and yeah, sure enough, it blew up. And so if you have questions, I am looking at the chat now that it's actively working. So shout out to our buddy here, Ron. Would just like to talk about, since the spoiler for Sentry came out, could you talk about the design process with that card?
Yeah. Sentry was a lot of fun to design. I think he was another one of those characters that went through an iteration or two, but we landed pretty quickly on his design. I didn't know very much about him. I had heard of Sentry. I knew he was in some ways analogous to like Marvel's Superman. He's super powerful, pretty much can't die. Like he just, he can fly around and just destroy everything. But as I was researching him and talking with Caleb Grace, it became very apparent that, he's dangerous to have around. Like sometimes you're rolling the dice on Sentry. Sometimes he's really going to help you, but sometimes he is not at all. And so, we tried out this design early on, the deal yourself an encounter card. and it was a lot of fun. So I've talked a bit. I think I talked on the AMA. I've talked before in other streams and stuff about how we used to have this aspect called determination.
Mm-hmm.
And determination's whole shtick was that they would do anything they had to win.
Yeah.
They would hurt themselves, put threat on schemes, whatever it was.
I think most people found out about it here first. I think this was the first.
I think that was the play. That's definitely it. Not the other ones. It was definitely here. But this was one of those designs, not strictly this ally, not even on an ally card, but we had a card in determination. It was like, deal yourself a card to do a thing, and I always loved that design. So when this sort of came about that it would work for Sentry, I was just like, yeah, we got to do that. And once we had that ability, it was really just a numbers game, kind of getting it right. He's a very, very powerful ally, but sometimes you do kind of screw yourself by playing him. Sometimes you get those side schemes, sometimes you get the advance, sometimes you get Shadow of the Past. Like I love that you're kind of playing with fire with him because that is Sentry to my understanding.
Well, it seems like too that even that concept, some of that stuff is kind of like leaked into like the aggression playset in general. Because even if you look on the Hulk ally, like the Hulk ally, you don't know what he's going to do when he swings. It's like a random flip, and it could be awesome. He could just ping everyone, but he also could just hurt everyone at the table, or just like go away and be like, "I'm done. You guys deal with this later."
Yeah,
Deuces.
that was fun. Peace. I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we decided to dissolve determination, we kind of took some things piecemeal, but I feel like, just thematically, a lot of the ideals that determination was focused on, they really do make sense in aggression. I mean, the idea of doing anything to win sounds pretty aggressive to me. So
it's true.
I don't think anyone should be surprised if we see more designs like this in the future, because I have fun with those types. I love those kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't type things, where you just like put them down and you're like, this is great, but maybe not. It's a lot of fun. So
yeah. So that's sweet. So the kind of add-ons through talking about aspects. So naturally, when you look at Hulk, he seems like he's tailor-made for the aggression aspect.
Sure.
But has there been a like surprise aspect combination that maybe through like testing, or that maybe that the player base, it was like really sneaky good, like with Hulk, or something they should consider? That might be another like really good build to pair up with his cards.
Are you alluding to why Banner's lab, Corey, generates not a physical resource?
I think that honestly, I think you look at Hulk and you say he's going to work in aggression, but generally when I play Hulk, I tend to play him protection or justice. Justice rounds him out super well. You already have so many cards that hit so hard that putting more cards that hit hard, sometimes it's just like, which way am I going to hit hard when you don't have your hand? It's just a little bit overkill. Justice rounds him out really well. It gives you options, because his weakness 100% is thwarting. And I know that Thor has kind of run into the same problem with a lot of solo play, where sometimes he just gets threaded out. I wouldn't be surprised if Hulk does the same thing. Like he's just focused on bashing enemies as much as he can. So mixing him with Justice really helps, kind of curve out that weakness a little bit. Kind of same thing with leadership to a certain extent. Leadership, I think a lot of the time you get that advantage of having blockers and stuff like that. Hulk doesn't need blockers as much as a lot of other heroes do, but having those allies in play give you a lot of flexibility in how you could thwart. But really at the end of the day, the aspect that I love him in is protection. You've got 3 defense, you have a ton of hit points. You can play his one upgrade that gives him 4 more hit points and retaliate 1. Like you can get really big and beefy, and you can kind of combine him with a lot of cards that like don't necessarily make you have to defend. Like I think Energy Barrier, that's already a pretty good card in and of itself. Yeah. You put it with Hulk though, you can absorb some of those attacks and then bounce some damage back. Or heck, even if you do want to defend, a lot of the cards that say I think the card Desperate Defense, if you defended or if you prevented all damage, ready your hero again. Like those types of things work really well in Hulk. So I personally really love him in protection, but I think any aspect works well in him, to be honest.
That's interesting. Yeah. Some fire questions here. Bob asks, what's up with the melee aggression card? Why does it no longer work to get by guard keyword?
Melee aggression card. Which one's melee? Oh, is melee it's like deal the 3 damage, deal the 3 damage?
I think you're right. Yeah,
That's
I think
the
it
one.
is.
I think that was one of those we maybe in testing it must have got past the guard. I actually don't remember the iterations of that one, but I think there was maybe a point where we just probably weren't happy with it. So we wanted to have sort of an attack that kind of let you take care of minions a little more easily. I think that over time we're going to see more variety in the aspects. I think we really want to keep their core designs very much intact, but we also want to look at how thematically, for instance, how can aggression remove threat, or thematically how could maybe like justice deal damage, something like that. I don't ever want justice to compare to aggression and dealing damage, but I definitely don't want that to be totally off the table as far as options are concerned. So we want to make sure that one of aggression's specific niches that not really any other aspect has is knocking out minions, and I think melee probably came about from that. We wanted to make sure when you get minion swarmed, you can just pop them away pretty much as quickly as they come.
Other fan question here, fan of Michael Boggs, that is. Does the Hulk impose a design limit for the future, with other heroes bound not to outmatch Hulk in raw damage dealing?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's kind of like we were discussing before. We want each hero to feel very powerful, and obviously we would like the heroes to be as balanced as they can against each other. But at the end of the day, while Hulk's focus is really his high hit points and his damage, like, I don't think there's a hard cap or limit to say that no other hero can outdamage. I don't know if it should necessarily be as easy in the long run to deal as much damage as Hulk, but if you like really work for it, I could see an argument maybe you could outdamage Hulk. I think honestly, generally when I play Hulk, like, you get to do a lot of times you'll draw your hand of 4 cards, you spend 3 resources to play a 3-cost card, and then maybe you like exhaust them to attack. You get to do 2 big things on your turn, and sometimes like with the Hulk Smash card, for instance, like you're reinforcing your big attack already. You're dealing 13 damage from that, but that's it. You just get to do that one thing. Yeah. But that's a very easy thing to do. You don't have to think a lot. You don't have to plan a lot. You just do it. If there's another hero that comes along and does 14 or 15 damage, but they have to combo the cards a little bit more, I think that's probably okay because you had to work harder for it. Yeah, just keeping that in mind.
So this card is another question about the Hulk set. It was spoiled today, so we're not leading you astray. It says, is electrostatic armor going to be errated? Its triggering condition has a U that can be interpreted as player. So response is after you defend against an attack, deal 1 damage to the attacking character.
So that card will not be eroded. I actually think that we're going to have an update relatively soon. Caleb and I have already talked about it. It's just kind of in the context of all the COVID stuff. It's a little harder to do those updates sometimes. But we're going to have an update to the definition of you in the rules. But early on, we felt that you was relatively self-explanatory, but we've realized that we were wrong, and that it has confused a lot of people. So our first iteration of you, we kind of talked to Nate French and tried to get something that we felt encapsulated what we were trying to go for, but I think it didn't quite do the job that it should. So at some point in the near future, I don't have an exact date, but we'll get an update to that definition soon.
Exclusive.
We'll make electrostatic armor work. It's supposed to just work with your hero. Yeah. When you use your hero to defend, that's when it triggers.
Last one of the chat questions at the moment. Loki is right now one of the few encounter cards that can derail the player's plans during the hero phase. Is this something we can expect more of as future scenarios become more difficult?
Yeah, I think we could maybe see more of that. I don't have anything specific in mind off the top of my head, but yeah, it's definitely. I always liked Loki's design. I didn't come up with it. Caleb Grace did, but I like how you can't math that out as easily as a lot of other things. So I think that creates a level of tension and excitement, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the design again in the future, a similar design at least.
Sweet.
Corey, you got back on track with it's
good. It's just the last little bit on it. So probably like one of the coolest cards I think comes in the set is actually the obligation for Hulk, Inner Demons.
Sure.
And a big reason because it's so different to what we've seen on the other obligation cards, which is something that we did like a whole episode on, like chatting about, creative and what type of design space ideas you're going to take with the obligations. So this is so different from what we've seen before, because normally it's just come out, does something bad, then it goes away, or you can remove it forever, but you can't remove the Hulk's obligation. It always will shuffle back in and come back and haunt you. So kind of what came into the idea behind that design, and is this something I'm assuming you guys are going to play with a lot more going down the road?
So I'll answer your second question first. Yes, we will play with obligations a lot more. Kind of in the same way that we wanted to keep a lot of the mechanics for scenarios kind of not too heavy early on. Same thing with obligations. Obligations are very much intended to give your alter ego this, storytelling moment. But I think it was actually really, really early in the design of the core set. Obligations didn't go away, and just seeing them again and again and again got real annoying and frustrating. So that's when we landed on the idea of, they're going to remove themselves from the game if you do this first option, or you can do this other thing that's sometimes bad, sometimes not that bad. But going forward, I think Hulk is a great example where we have this character that really has this truly unique sort of relationship between their hero and their alter ego form, and the obligation card is sort of supposed to already kind of reinforce those relationships anyway. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, or Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. But here we're just like, this is the best place to put that fourth flip mechanic, because sometimes it's going to come up at the worst time. Some games you're going to play and you're like, I got to be Hulk the whole time. Like that level of unpredictability really sort of lends itself to what Hulk is. Like, he never knows when he's going to go back. And it also does it in a way that's not just eye rolling. Like, you're not just doing it all the time and it just becomes frustrating. So yeah, we can certainly see more designs like this in the future.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, Michael, so we did an episode a little while ago talking about the most impactful obligations. One person was wrong, and they said Inner Demons was the most game-impacting obligation, right? One person was right and said Legal Work was the most game-impacting obligation, right? Because the fact that it adds an accelerator token. Like, you can't get rid of an accelerator. You can't do it, right? And could you settle this argument for us?
Or perhaps there's another obligation that you think is like the most annoying or most impactful one out of the currently known and released heroes.
Yeah, and we're talking about obviously from the point that if that obligation hits, right? And not the fact that if there's a certain amount of boost on it, or the other ones, just exhaust your character and put it into play. Like, if you are hit with it, if that condition triggers, what do you feel is the most or your most annoying obligation that you guys have designed to date?
Oh man, that
or not designed to date, but released for public consumption.
Yeah.
So I think that I think I would probably have to say, I think it is down to those two. I was actually looking at some other obligations on my computer, but I feel like those are the most dividing. I think for me, it would depend on the number of players. If you're playing single player, Hulk's obligation is super annoying, and sometimes it can really force you, into a corner. But I think a lot of the time you can get around it. You flipped a Bruce Banner, you discard some cards. You're like, oh crap, I'm just gonna flip the Hulk next turn and smash him face. Whereas, if you draw Legal Work in a single player, heck, even a 2-player game, sometimes Legal Work is just ridiculous. That extra accelerator. I mean, that's a whole encounter deck going away. But at the same time, you get to 3 or 4 player, that one acceleration icon is not as big a deal. So I feel like both people were right.
Yeah, look at this. The diplomatic answer.
Yeah.
Well done.
I think if I had to choose, I would probably pick Inner Demons because I've had it come up in just some situations was like, this is bull crap. I hate everything right now.
Call to the new. Call to the new.
I'm just trying to promote my stuff. That's all.
There you go. That's good. That's good. Sweet. Cool. Well, that's everything that I had for the Hulk. I don't know if there's any like last minute listener questions that came in, but I think we can.
Let me check. Or even if there wasn't last minute, if you said something at the beginning,
we probably lost it.
Yeah.
I will throw in I had some other friends submit questions to me, and I will throw one that was given. It's on topic, off topic, but it's related. So they mentioned that FFGs, LCGs have a habit of repeating names of cards across games, such as Calling in Favors and Sure Gamble from Netrunner appearing in Arkham. As a former developer of Netrunner, is there a card name or theme you would like to borrow from Netrunner to put in Marvel Champions? It's like an Easter egg?
Yeah, there's going to be things we'll see. There are going to be names we'll see real soon. I'll say that much.
That's awesome. That's sweet of it.
I know that specifically with Sure Gamble, like Matt Newman is a massive fan of Netrunner. He helped develop a lot of the stuff there. He actually helped me transition from the Damon Stone era of cards to the golden age of Michael Boggs cards. So,
yes.
He was there to sort of show me the ropes and teach me a lot of things. And yeah, it would not surprise me if you see even more Arkham cards with Netrunner. No mass produced.
So one day when I'm playing the limited Venom hero and I get a Jinteki obligation, I'm going to be like,
what's happening? What's going on?
Yeah, what is this? What is this? What is this? Jinteki? What? Flip your hero or do 2 net damage.
Sweet.
Cool. Michael, from a mechanic perspective, have we seen your favorite mechanic in the game right now, or is it yet to come?
Oh, it's definitely yet to come. I feel like, honestly, going forward, so something I love about Marvel Champions is that, the design is, at its core, it's relatively simple. You draw some cards, discard some resources, attack some stuff, and then you draw an encounter card. Like, there's not a lot of super involved processes. Once you kind of understand the flow, I feel like it's pretty easy to just kind of work through all that. But from a design perspective, of course, we want to keep it simple. But because that framework is so simple, we can kind of do a lot of really interesting things and really kind of push the boundaries. So I think going forward, there are mechanics both on the player side and on the encounter side that we haven't seen yet that I'm really, really excited for.
Do you ever feel like we'll eventually hit a point, because this is such I feel like the ability to get into this game appeals to anyone. So you don't have to be a superhero fan, and you don't have to be crazy in depth into board games. You can pick up the core set. The mechanics are very easy to play with. The deck building is very streamlined. Do you feel that as we start layering this stuff on, that there's going to have to be like a complexity rating or something added to some of these packs? Because I feel like this game is very modular, right? Like, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't want it, but just say if you didn't want to pick up a certain hero or a certain pack, you don't need it. It's not detrimental, right? Like, you're not releasing them as like an Arkham Horror kind of like, these are the 7 or 8 packs in your story. All of a sudden, I'm like, I'm going to pick up packs, 1, 3, and 5. And you're like, that makes absolutely no sense because because now you've just, like, unless you're playing them as standalones, which the game does offer, but with Marvel, I don't have to go out and grab that latest hero pack right away because I can buy a different pack, or I can, if two heroes are there on the store shelf, I can pick and choose. It's not like a certain order that I have to play these in, but eventually, I feel like as the game rolls on, the mechanics are going to build up. Maybe the scenarios like the Goblin or Wrecking Crew, I'm going to have to read a little more in that little included booklet. Do you think that we'll have to see that? Or are you trying to keep the game complexity at this certain bar level for the entire point of the game because the vastness that it appeals to.
Yeah, I think that over time the complexity is going to ramp up just naturally. It's pretty much unavoidable. But we do everything that we can to keep that ramp as small as possible. Like anytime we are developing a new hero pack, anytime we're developing a new scenario, we are always having conversations about, could a new player if I see as an example, like if I see Thor on the shelf. Thor is my favorite hero, and I've never played this game before. I don't know a lot about it, or maybe my friends got it. I'm like, yeah, I saw him play it. It seems really cool. I want to jump in. I should be able to pick up Thor and sit down and maybe like play with the cards a little bit, get familiar, but then I should just be able to jump in with Thor. And I should be able to do that with Miss Marvel and Black Widow and all of those. Some of those heroes are a little bit heavier. Some of those heroes are more combo-y, but at the end of the day, anyone should be able to play them and have fun with them and feel powerful when they do. I think really appealing to that type of customer, that type of player, it really forces us into a situation where we have to keep things streamlined and simple as much as we can, which at the end of the day, I've learned as a player, I really prefer. If I sit down and have to read rules and keep track of all these triggers and these timing things, like I don't want to do all that. So I feel like a lot of people do just want to jump into the game and play. But over time, like I was saying before, I think as the game progresses and ages, while we always want to appeal to that new person, and I think we've done a lot of things that really help new people jump in with just having that pre-built deck and having those almost pre-built scenario packs. I think the people that are going to follow the game for years are going to want some more complex and deeper content. So we really have to balance those two parties, and it's something. It's a challenge, but it's something we're always thinking about, something we're always talking about, I definitely think, like I said, with this style of game, this is going to be the most difficult thing probably on your plate, sure. Right? Because, like you said, there may be people that have the core set and maybe they're just waiting for that one hero to come out because they're like, all I need is that one more hero. I'm a Squirrel Girl fan, and once I can play Squirrel Girl, then I'm good, right?
Who is that person?
I don't know. It's all I could think of.
There are Squirrel Girl. Moon Knight. Yeah. I will say Moon Knight. That's the one I always see. Are they doing Moon Knight next? He's got to be next, right? He's in the Hydra box. Like, I always seeing comments about Moon Knight. I don't know anything about Moon Knight. I want to know more about Moon Knight, but I don't know anything about him. But there are just some die-hard Moon Knight fans. Man.
Well, I know that you've already hit my family's sweet spot when my son doesn't even know anything about the game, and as long as one day he can play Black Panther, I just show him the Black Panther cards and he's good. And now you just gotta give him Miles Morales and he'll be fine. So get in that alternate Spider-Verse and not the Spider-Ham. We can skip on that. We don't need the pigs. Yeah, we can skip that, or the Nicolas Cage Spider Noir. But Michael, the last question that I kind of have here is can you talk? And this is maybe it's a mute point, as you can probably just say, yes, it will come. But can you talk about the restricted aspect that we've seen attached to Thor's hammer and Captain America's shield specifically, right? Where there's no other in this deck building world yet any cards that would be able to to put into play that would not meet this criteria of max 2 restricted cards per player. And why would we see that on a kit card, as you've called it? Like, why wouldn't you guys just, if hero cards inside their kit are going to be restricted, why wouldn't it just be 1 restricted card per hero?
So restricted cards kind of allow us. We generally, I believe, Lord of the Rings did it. I think that's actually where it came about. That we kind of, and even Arkham to a certain extent, they kind of have their item slots. But really, restricted cards are sort of supposed to be like, this thing's in my left hand, this thing's in my right hand. So that keyword effectively suggests that down the line we will see cards maybe in the aspect pool that
future
will play with that. Right, yeah, exactly, right? Maybe Thor's wielding the hammer in his right hand, but something else in his left hand. I think actually right now there's is it aggression? There's Jarnbjorn, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But that's the only one so far. And you got both of those cards down, the hammer or the shield and whatever. So you meet that criteria. But I think later on we'll definitely see it being more of an interesting decision on which restricted cards you have in play.
Right. I guess it's one of those things. You've learned from your mistakes and future-proof off the get-go, huh?
Yeah, you gotta start early. Yep.
So I guess to add into like future-proofing, has there been any thoughts or ideas? Like, so when a hero's done, they have their 15, they're finished. Have you guys come up with any maybe like future campaign ideas or things that will let players manipulate or play with those 15? Or maybe like an alternate like card swap out option or anything like that? Or is that pretty much like locked and done?
It's something we could do. I think generally whenever we're coming up with ideas like that, a lot of times we value, mostly because there are already so many iconic characters in the Marvel Universe.
It's true.
Generally, when we have conversations about what we could do with heroes, it's just like, well, let's just new heroes. Like, it sounds a lot of fun to like swap out Peter Parker's cards, and it might be, but is that more fun than just introducing a brand new 15, kit of cards? So
correct. Yeah.
But that doesn't take it off the table. Like, it's not something that I would be surprised if we saw down the line, but I don't know if it's something that we'll see, within the next little bit.
What I do like is you guys are doing stuff with the now I forget the word for it. What are they called, Corey?
The aspects?
The traits.
The traits. Oh, yeah. The traits. Oh, that's right. Yeah, obviously this is Jameson. Jameson loves traits. He also loves it when traits are actually utilized within the game that gives traits, on the cards. So I was happy that we're actually seeing early on that the traits are actually getting used and referenced like early in the game.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how many Netrunner traits wanted to be used and they just never were. I very much felt the same way. Very much felt the same way. So I think going forward, traits are such an easy way to kind of not only create interesting decisions in gameplay and deck building, but also just to kind of like divide the card pool in a very balanced way. We can say like, hey, we know only these cards can work together, and that's strong, but it's not going to break the game in this way necessarily. So both myself and Caleb are a fan of using those, and yeah, we'll see that type of design.
Yeah, it also seems as like a cool way. I mean, also if you think about like the casual community, like if you're deck building and you see cards with traits that associate, it's like immediately like, oh, this is a good starting point to go through and put these cards into play, and then you can branch off from there after you get a bunch of games under your belt.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I mean, obviously my stuff does go back from Netrunner, right? Where all these traits, awesome, cool little things were everywhere, and I was always looking for, that pairing, right? Like, even when the IDs had traits on them too, and they didn't really flush out. But anyway, Michael, chat question: can you talk about anything to do with a release of a timing sheet? Is there going to be clarification around timing in the game?
So this is actually a conversation we've had internally multiple times, and there have kind of been different people have had different opinions at different times. We talked about having one during the core set, but it was kind of decided sort of on a higher level that we weren't going to do it, mostly because of the audience that we wanted to appeal to. And having those timing sheets, I think for a lot of players is super useful. Like, you know exactly when things happen, but also a lot of players look at them and it makes things almost more confusing in a way. As weird as that sounds, like, it makes the game feel a lot heavier and a lot more complex than maybe it actually is. So in the core set we didn't provide it, and then we talked a little bit later about maybe we should do it. I think at some point we will see it. Really, it honestly comes down to bandwidth. Timing sheets, they take a bit of work to put together,
and then the upkeep, right?
Yeah, the upkeep, and just making sure that like you get it right the first time, because if like one thing is out of order, then it might mess everything up, and it's just sort of a logic puzzle. So it's something we want to do. It's probably something we will do eventually, but just within the context of everything else, it might not be something we see immediately.
I'm sure though, and I could speak wholeheartedly for this community that if you put something out on the internet, Michael, that is not correct the first time, no worries,
no complaints.
Yeah,
everyone's cool with it.
I'm sure
they understand.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone will give you a do-over, for free.
That's good to know. I'll just put my first iteration up. You guys can expect it here probably in the next hour. Just put
it up on a Google Docs, and the whole community can just build it for you, right?
That would be easy. That would be nice.
Just you start it off. Just be like start, and then have the rest of everybody fill it in.
I'll just put the title. And then,
that's it.
Sweet. Fantastic.
I think that looks to be almost everything. So with you working on probably this huge, maybe only second to Star Wars, now it's like a Disney IP thing. Are you get to bump your Fantasy Flight special card ahead of schedule? Are you going to appear in any card soon?
I'm pushing for it, but I don't know if we'll see it.
You should be.
I know they have
definitely the boy wonder on the block. I know. Forget the 5-year thing. Get it now.
Just do it right now. Yeah. I've been there 3.5 years, so that's.
So you're close. You're close.
But generally, what it is, it's like you hit the 5-year, but then it takes a while to not only create the thing but also release the thing. So some people have been there like 7 years, and it's still not out yet. It's created. It's just not out in the ether or whatever. So we'll see it eventually. We'll see it one day. If I get to choose anything, I got to choose Android. Like that's the IP I want to be in. So whatever we're doing with that at the time, if anything, like I want to do Android. So even if it's just my own art piece and I get to keep it, that's all I care.
That's it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey,
I think I saw a comment once on Reddit about how if there was a Michael Boggs Netrunner card, it would be like a little red beanie. It was like, yeah, it probably not even going to be me. It's just going to
just the beanie, and that's it. Beanie. They'll just know.
They won't even have wires or like little nodes. It'll just be a normal beanie just sitting on.
That's I think that would be so fitting if that was like a 2-cost upgrade in Marvel is instead of like Thor's helmet or the helmet, it's
Boggs
just
beanie.
Boggs beanie. Add 5 to your hit points. Or it would probably have to be something like a lot crazier than that, right? I think Thor's
just like when you draw a card, you get to just choose its text.
Yeah,
this card does.
Design.
I do that all the time. It's really good.
That'd be so thematic then, for you, the designer card. Michael, any other closing words that you'd like to questions that you really hoped were going to be asked that you can clear up right now? I got a special one. There's huge rumors that in the official, or not the official, but in the community Discord, that you're a lurker in there with a alternate ID.
Ooh, maybe.
People are saying you lurk the Discords.
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I like to stay connected. I go on Facebook and I look at those communities. I go on Reddit a lot. I try to just get around. I look on BGG. Like there's some forum posts and stuff. It's good to know what people like, what they dislike, what they're excited about. Just what they're talking about. So I try to stay connected as I can. Sometimes, I'll go a few weeks without checking, but every now and then I'll try to come back. I was actually going to say if there was one thing that I wanted to say to the community, it's just that I've seen a lot of the appreciation around some of the Hulk cards, and I'm really happy that people are excited, especially the aggression cards. I was always pretty happy with those. I know that for a long time, aggression has sort of been the aspect that a lot of people have liked the least, even though it's always been my favorite. I like just smashing face. Like, I think having some of those Hulk cards will hopefully make it a little more appealing to some people. So I'm glad that those in the community have kind of seen that and really appreciated it.
Yeah, if it's anything, if your work is anything like ours, like look, we have likes on this YouTube podcast already, and we haven't even completed it yet, right? So I'm sure whatever you do, people will like before it's even out or completed. That's the similarities here.
Sure.
As always, I wish we could go on forever, but you always sink so much of your time into us, and we appreciate it.
You only pay me so much.
I know. Don't cash that check till Friday, right? Corey, you got anything else that you'd like to add in there, man?
No, man. I mean, it's been great. I appreciate you answering all the questions, and especially like from the audience and everything. So it's been awesome. Thanks again for coming on, and look forward to see what's coming down the pipe.
Yeah, it's exciting. I always love coming on here. It's one of my favorite shows to do for sure. So you guys are super fun to talk to.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you very, very much for sharing your time and the laughs. We'll catch everybody else another time. We're out for now.
Later.